All right, on set of Jungle Cruise, I'm getting ready to head to set. Before I went to set, I look, and on my TV live is the CFL game, Canadian football, between Edmonton and BC, the BC Lions. That guy right there, Wally Buono, was my coach when I played in the CFL for Calgary. He was a mentor of mine. He ultimately cut me from the team. But the reason why I'm saying this is because it was such a defining time, and I appreciate that man so much, and I appreciate me playing on this very field. I didn't make it to the NFL, and I wanted so badly to make it to the NFL after the CFL. My point of this is to tell you guys, sometimes in life, something you want so badly, your dreams that don't happen, sometimes they're the best things that never happen. So for me, playing in the NFL was the best thing that never happened. I thank you, CFL. I thank you, Wally Buono, and to everybody out there, keep working hard. And sometimes your biggest dreams that don't come true are the best things that never happen.
What is up, my friends, and welcome to another edition of the XFL Week in Review. I'm your host, Mark Perry, editor of Xfl News Hub. And on this week's show, a possibility that the XFL season might not happen in 2022. We'll get into that and my thoughts and on that. The XFL CFL talk has really heated up in Canada. We'll review some of that, plus the latest news and so much more. So how do you get in touch with the show? You know the drill. Podcast at xflnewshub.com with your MP3s or videos, or call 888-430-7692, extension 3. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show. We appreciate the getting the word out as all these new fans are coming around the XFL, our friends up north. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Helps spread the word there so that we can get the word out with the XFL. Connect with our CFL brothers and sisters up north as well. And welcome all of my friends in Canada. It has been a fun experience, I will have to say, over the last week or two, learning about the CFL, and I'm getting more and more into it. And our question of the week, this posed before I get into my little what's going on behind the scenes, where I think things are going to go. I'll get to that in a second. But our question of the week, this is posed to XFL fans, and it has to do with a potential not having a 2022 season, and we'll get into that in a second too. As XFL fans, you need to pick what your CFL team is, because it's looking like there will be a CFL season in 2021 and 2022. And if there's no XFL season in either one of those 2 years, you kind of need to pick a CFL team. So our question of the week, I picked mine. As a matter of fact, I even went and bought a hat of my team. I'll announce my team. I think you guys might already know who it is, but I'll announce my team next week that I have picked, researched, looked at the data, analyzed things, called experts in the world of picking teams, and I have my CFL team. So you got to pick yours. So next week's question of the week is, who is your CFL team? And I want to know why. Why did you pick that team? Because this is basically going to be your team leading all the way up until we can get into potentially the 2023 year, when all of this kind of stuff comes together. Now, speaking of all of this stuff coming together, we have heard that there's talks and then nothing. And I've thought about this, listened to a lot of pundits and people's take on Twitter and YouTube, like all different kinds of where they think is going. And I've talked about this before, but I've also kind of dissect more into it. So basically there's two, to preface all this, I'm a software engineer by day. So this isn't like my full-time job. I did go to college for communications, radio and television. So I do have a background in that, but there was no money in that. And so I went into software engineer. So I'm a software engineer by day, and I have to take problems, break them down, and then kind of put them together, because that's what you kind of do. You get requirements from somebody, and then you do an analysis, and then you figure out how to build it. And that's how my brain works. So essentially we have two options. We have a merger option as one, or we have the leagues running in parallel as two. Now, I don't think they know exactly what is going to be for several reasons. But I will say this, that if the CFL does have a season in 2021, which it seems that it could potentially, then I have a feeling they're going to run in parallel. So here are your two options. We've got merge, run in parallel. If there's a CFL season in 2021, the leagues will run in parallel. If there is no season in 2021, then it will be a full merger. So you heard it here first. This is just my prediction. I don't know anything specific. I've heard a lot of different things, but that's kind of my take. And I think where we're at now is I always think that it's a fluid situation. I think the reason why we haven't heard anything per se after like, hey, we're just having talks is three reasons. Because I don't think they know really what's in store yet either. So number one, there is Canada. The Canadian Football League needs fans in the stands to be able to even function and have a season. That's up in the air right now. And according to our friends up north, this vaccine rate there is much slower than it is in the United States. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong or not, but I don't even think there's fans in hockey games yet. So I believe that if fans can start to get in the stands, that could open up I don't think the CFL can play a season without having fans in the stands. So that's kind of like where they're kind of chilling and waiting right now. You also have the XFL, who is still coming out of bankruptcy. It's the chapter is not closed. Who knows what goes on behind that? We thought maybe like, all right, once the bankruptcy is over, that you can just turn on the keys and we're ready to rock and roll. It doesn't seem like that. Who knows what kind of litigation's going on behind the scenes? Like, we have no idea. And it, all intents and purposes, I don't think that whole era is closed yet of the bankruptcy. So that kind of delays things too. So you have that and that. And the other thing is this letter, these talks, there was essentially a letter of intent to be able to kind of have talks. And you're like, well, why don't you just talk? Why do you need this letter of intent? And part of it, I believe, and I'm no legal expert, but just deducing, I think part of the reason they signed a letter of intent is to give Redbird Capital and the XFL a chance to really look at the CFL's books. And I think that is why things are kind of on pause, because there's two ways that what can happen. Redbird Capital can acquire 20% of the CFL, give them the money they need to potentially have a season now and a season next year, and then they do their thing and that's it. So I think where we're at now, because you would need to sign a letter of intent in order to be able to really get access to the books. Because if they gave you access to the books and you were like, wow, you're going bankrupt, I'm just going to wait till you go bankrupt and then I'll buy you out. That's why I think in some simplistic way, that's why there was like a letter of intent and things needed to be signed in order for that conversation to happen. So I believe right now they have a plan in place, but I think it's looking at the books, seeing like, all right, what was really going on here financially for the CFL, and how are we going to get a season in? But it's like everybody kind of has to wait one thing. There's all these different parts that you need to wait to kind of find out. So as fans, if we hear that the CFL is going to have a season and this is the kickoff date and this is blah, 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 then I believe the league will run in parallel. And how would that work is clearly they would have to have a standard rule book. Then I believe there would be one or two crossover games. They have to count. The crossover games have to count. And then a potential CFL plays for the Grey Cup. The XFL plays for the whatever cup. And then the two winners of that potentially play each other. And then, but both leagues, there'll be the CFL and the XFL, and they will play at around the same time, but with the same TV contract. I think something like that will work. The problem is, I was thinking about this again in the IT world. As much as merging things together and having one central location sounds like a great idea, I'll give you an example in the IT world. And I've worked at many companies where they thought this was a great idea, is that they were going to have a central location. And I'm sure you people have worked in places where they say, hey, you know what? Instead of having all these IT guys all over the place fixing computers and printers or whatever, we're just going to have one central location that's virtual, and we're just going to do things that way. And maybe have like one or two people around in that location that has never worked in the history. I've been in this business for 20 years ish. That never has worked. And the problem with a merger, if you're like, all right, we're going to straight merger, is that Redbird Capital, The Rock, Danny Garcia, they understand how it works in the United States, but they don't necessarily understand how it works in Canada. And you have all these other owners of CFL franchises in Canada and their relationships and their sponsorship stuff. It's almost like you're better off to really run the two leagues in parallel at the same time and then have some crossover. That's a lot. You're like getting, it's like me like opening up a restaurant in Ireland. Yeah, well, I'm Irish, right? I mean, I'm genetically, I am 80, 90, I think it was 96% Irish or something like that, if you can tell my pale skin. So I'm something like that because I did that ancestry thing. Me opening a restaurant in Ireland would just not work. I'm American, dude. I was born in New York. I have no clue of how things work in Ireland. And yeah, I could get people in Ireland to help me, but that's a big hurdle. And I think to keep it simple, at least for now, we're looking 3 years out, is to just have, because the XFL needs to prove itself and finish a season. Because what if the XFL starts in the US and no one watches it? And they get like, measly numbers, or it tanks, and then the CFL is in trouble. So they have to, I believe that that's what's going to happen, is that the leagues will run in parallel. You'll have the CFL and the XFL. Maybe like 5 or 6 years, they might like talk merger or something like that. But I think that's how it's going to work. But I think that's how they would like it to work without knowing the books yet. Now they get into the books, if the CFL financially is just in shambles and like, yeah, there's nothing we can do with this. Like, this is like screwed. That's when you say, all right, they're going to merge because the CFL was basically done. I don't think it's done. I think there's life in that league, and I think they have the ability to make it work. That's where I kind of think things are now. So as we sit back and watch and see what happens, if we see, the biggest marker for me anyways, is if the CFL has a season, they have their draft, we'll get into that in a second, and they have, gameplay, whether it starts in June or whether it starts in July and August, and they have a shortened season, anything. I think that is going to be the key of whether we're talking a merger, where the CFL becomes the Continental Football League or the North American Football League, and it's the XFL, you know what I mean? The thing that would make it agile and make sense in the short term is to let the two leagues run in parallel with basically sharing resources and helping each other along the way. Because, having an American doing social media stuff for a Canadian football team and living in Alabama or Florida or Hawaii, or, you know what I mean? It's just not the same as having boots on the ground in that area. And I just don't think it would work. And I think you want to keep it agile. And I think it would work. I think it absolutely work. And it would be very exciting. And it's for the love of football. So that's kind of my take. I want to kind of put it out there. I've been pondering it over the last week, listening to everybody. So I want to hear your thoughts. Clearly, podcast at xflnewshub.com. Leave us a comment on the YouTubes or on our website, XFL News Hub, whatever you think. I'm curious to hear your take, but that's kind of how I think things will go. Now, we'll get into the news. There has been some stuff going on this week. The main thing that was a big talked about deal was our friend Mike Mitchell's article. Mike wrote a much talked about article that says there's a strong possibility the XFL does not return to play in 2022. If you haven't had a chance, head over to xflnewshub.com. You'll find it and take a look through it. It is a long, detailed article about all different kinds of aspects of this thing. It's a great read. It's a long read, which is good, but there's so much information in there for you to check out. But essentially, the idea is that they probably won't be playing an XFL season in 2022. There's just too much logistics going on. I mean, we haven't even, as they pause things, I mean, we don't have a CFO yet. There's coaches. I mean, you have basically till June to start hiring coaches and that whole kind of thing. I mean, I don't see it. He doesn't see it. We need, as XFL fans, need to be prepared that there won't be a 2022 season. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing to do, because that's where the CFL comes in. We're watching CFL games. There's XFL players, and we'll get into that in a second, that will probably be on the field. Unlike the NFL, we will get to see some of our guys on the CFL field. I'm super excited about that. And we've talked about some of those player names. So you'll have that going. And really, the 2022 season, the 2022 year will be really exciting. Now, I think that they'll keep the CFL rules now. There's no need to change anything. Just let's get on the field, play out our season, and then we'll talk in the off season. Potentially 2022 could see the season where the CFL rules change, but everything else stays the same. Just like a little increment there. But at the same time, as the CFL 2022 season rolls on, then there's going to be more of what the XFL is going to do when their draft is, and then we'll have more of an idea of people getting hired and coaches and scouting and all this. So 2022 would be a very busy year, even if there's no games in the spring. That's if the CFL plays this season. So take a shot, take a read on that as well over on XFL News Hub. I think you'll really kind of gives you a background and really honestly prepares you for potentially what's to come. Now, when will we get some kind of announcement, a definitive announcement? Who knows? It goes back to what I was saying before, that there's all these other pieces that have to fall in line first before they can get an idea. With this letter of intent that was signed, where they were talking about talking, and looking at the books, the XFL might look at the CFL and go, dude, no way. You told us that you were in the hole 10 million and you're actually in the hole 200 million. It's not even worth it for us. Peace. And then all of a sudden you'll say, hey, talks broke down. XFL season will start in 2022, and then the XFL will go on its way. So that's why this whole this situation is fluid. Now, what's been interesting over the last week is being able to listen to, it's fun, for me at least, to be able to listen to people talking about the CFL and the XFL, talking about at least like spring football. And it got me super excited. I'm super excited about the CFL season. You should be too. I've been watching some Disney Plus. ESPN Plus, I've been watching some of those new the CFL videos, trying to get accustomed to like the field's size and the rules. I'm like, y'all are moving around in the backfield. I mean, in the American game, it's like you got to move, you got to sit still. But it's also been interesting to watch and listen to and read some of the comments because in Canada, this is a way bigger deal. I mean, you got to remember these XFL only played 5 games. Yes, the footprint is there, but in the CFL, they've been around for 100+ years. And even though their fan base is sort of dwindling and it might be an older one, but they still have good numbers. So it's interesting to hear the take and our friends up north about what's going on. So on XFL News Hub, we got a bunch of comments. Basically, what I'm going to do is at the end of the week is kind of put together comments from a lot of people in Canada talking about the XFL, CFL, and where they think things are going. You know, they'll talk about whether they think it's going to merge, whether they're going to play in parallel. It's been real interesting, but if you head over to XFL News Hub, I'm not going to read all the comments, but you get the idea. Is if you want to kind of get the flavor of what's going on in Canada, definitely head over to xflnewshub.com. Now, also in some sad news this past week, Rusty Tillman, former New York, New Jersey hitman coach, had passed away. Very famously got into it with Jesse Ventura, a very kind of purist football guy that wasn't into the gimmick of the XFL in the original era. So again, our thoughts and prayers with Rusty Tillman, his family and friends, and a really good guy. Everybody liked him, spent a lot of time in the NFL as well. And so one of the OG original XFL coaches, Rusty Tillman, had passed away this past week. So again, thoughts and prayers are with his family. It's been a crappy year, that's for dang sure. He was 75 years old. Now, in other XFL news, more of from the XFL 2020 season, we did have some good news. First up, Trey Williams, running back for the Dragons, he signs with the CFL's Calgary Stampeders. And here's the thing. Who's on the Calgary Stampeders? Well, he's the fifth. There's 5 other XFL players on the Stampeders. And he is the 5th Seattle Dragons player to sign with the CFL team. Jeremy Clark is on the Rough Riders. Dantes Bird is on the Tiger Cats. Yeah. Channing Stribling is on the Tiger Cats. And Jonathan Alston is on the Red Blacks. So we're going to definitely get a chance to see some XFL players in the CFL playing on the field. Another one, Guardians DB Wesley Sutton. He signs with the Montreal Alouettes. Alouettes have some guys on that you might be familiar with. He joins Philip Nelson, quarterback of the Dallas Renegades. We remember him. Eli Rogers with America's team, the DC Defenders. Who's going to be Canada's team? We have America's team is the DC Defenders. Who is Canada's team? I think I know what it is, and maybe I'll have to announce that next week. And wide receiver Nelson Spruce from the Wildcats. Definitely, Spruce was like fantasy football money in the beginning. He was a big time and then got hurt. I would be curious. I'm hoping that he gets the field. I'll watch those games just because Nelson Spruce is on the field. So that makes me, I'm super excited. I mean, at least we can get a chance to see our guys play on the field, maybe every week, every down, versus, oh, yay, our guy made it into the NFL, and they're on the practice squad. That's so fun. I'd rather watch them every week on TV. So speaking of TV stuff, the Fan Control Football League has come to a close for those wondering about that. The Glacier Boys lost to the Wild Aces. The final score was 40-46. Honestly, I went on their website. I couldn't find like a recap of what happened or video highlights or any of that kind of stuff. So who knows what's going on there. But congratulations. They finished, Fan Control Football's finished their season. The Spring League has finished their season. So hopefully this is a good sign that the CFL will get their season going. And speaking of the CFL, so the CFL Global Draft will take place on April 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm not really sure where we can watch it or all that kind of stuff. I'll get details as it comes closer. And the CFL Draft will occur in early May with a specific date announced in early April. So we should get all this. We'll get some news and information about the Global Draft and the CFL Draft happening, and then in May. And then the players are supposed to start at some point in the near future after that, or reporting for training camp. I mean, there's supposed to be teams. There's preseason games in June. So this little information right here makes me believe that we might not get a June kickoff to the preseason game of the CFL. I mean, if you're talking CFL draft will occur in early May, so say it's the first week in May. I mean, players need to be in training camp a week after that draft, at least, to start get going if they're going to play preseason games in June. So this is making me kind of wonder if things will kind of get pushed back. Because if they knew, they would just give you the date now. Not really sure why you have to wait. I think they're just trying to kick the can a little bit. And that's why I think that we're going to get a little delay in the CFL season. But I don't think it will be shut down for sure. Because clearly we saw 2 XFL players signing with CFL teams. So clearly, if they weren't going to do anything, they would have told them it's probably not a good idea to sign these guys to contracts. So we shall see. All right, we'll get to your social media stuff and so much more right after this. Stay tuned, my friends.
Here's what you missed on the XFL Markcast.
Well, I made the joke 2 weeks ago to Paul. I said, I'm so good at filling this show that if we ever get any actual real XFL news, we might have to do like a double episode, or we might have to go to 2 days a week. And Paul was terrified at that thought, but here we are. We have real XFL news. And Ernesto, would you believe that before you even sit down today, I think Paul and I have an hour and 20 minutes of content already recorded for today. So no matter what we do, talking about all the stuff that's currently happening, we have a lot of stuff that we've gone through.
Hey everyone, glad to be on here and co-hosting the show. So it's pretty exciting, and let's have some fun.
Ernesto and I are going to break down kind of the most recent stuff with Kenneth Farrow, with the United Football Players Association, talking about the CFL. We have Paul and I have an interview with Kenneth Farrow. He's going to come on the show, talk all about what they were trying to do, come across with everything with their statements this week. We have a lengthy interview with Rod Peterson, very, very animated interview. We're going to talk about, there is actually other XFL news this week, if you can believe it. We're going to talk about spring league updates. Ernesto's got indoor football stuff. We're going to talk about fan control football. And we even have, to bury the show, Super Bowl champion Robert Turbo Turbin. We have an interview with him coming up as well. So this literally could be a 2.5 hour episode, all said and done. So just, sit tight. And like I said, please like and subscribe if you can. What do you think about all the news and stuff that we have today, Ernesto?
I mean, it's just coming so fast with all these different, sources coming out in the news, and hearing the CFL and the XFL wanting to merge or just in talks. As a player perspective, we're looking at it like, all right, they got the ball rolling somewhere here, and we're just hoping, at the end of the tunnel, we see something happen. We're just hoping that things aren't, pushed back, or, because a lot of us free agents, we're all still training, living our lives, and trying to make our dreams come true as well. So we're hopefully that some of this news gets cleared up and that things get going pretty soon.
Of course, you can find XFL Markcast on XFL News Hub and wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube.
What's up, XFL Army? If you're a fan of the XFL News Hub and you have a telephone, which I know all of you do because you're sitting there playing on your phones all the time, then why not download the XFL News Hub app? That's right, it's on iTunes. It's on Android. We have an Android version and an iPhone version of the XFL News Hub app. So what do you get? You get the latest news from XFL News Hub, the premier source of XFL news in the universe. Plus, you get push notifications when we have breaking news. You will be the first to know. You can leave a comment on some of the news right from your phone. Plus, you get this podcast on your phone as well. Remember, you can leave us reviews on the Google Play Store or iTunes. It links to other social media, our other social media accounts, and so much more. Be in the know. I know you're on your phones. People are on their phones all the time. They never get off their phones. So why not just download the XFL News Hub app on your Android or iPhone today? All you need to do is go to the Google Play Store or iTunes and just type in XFL News Hub. That's XFL News Hub. Download our app on your phone today. So I put out a Facebook post about doing some research watching the Grey Cup Unite on ESPN Plus, and it was interesting, and I enjoyed it, listening to all the commentators and stuff. I'm just super excited about it. But Jared says, Blue Bombers are my favorite CFL team. I went to Winnipeg in 2008. I've seen their old stadium, and the new one is sweet. I heard many CFL teams need better stadiums. We shall see about that. So thanks, Jared, for the message there. And I'm so excited to have my friends all around the world commenting on this. And then, of course, the TSN analyst talking about the CFL, XFL potential merger. Casey says, obviously, if you had read up on them, that's why XFL is holding back on their season. They're hoping to work out a deal with the CFL. We shall see about that, Casey. I think there's, like I've said, a lot of parts moving right now. On the Instagram, we have a picture that says XFL is delayed till 2022. And there's a picture of Drake, I think, like pushing it away, and then bottom of it says to partner with CFL, and then there's a smile. So I think that's kind of where that's going. America Guy 1776 says possible XFL and CFL combining ideas. The North American Football League, NAFL, has two conferences, the CFL and the XFL. I kind of agree with that. 9 teams in the CFL, 9 teams in the XFL, 55 players on each team with an additional 8 on a practice squad. Playoffs, top 4 teams from each conference get in. The NAFL Cup rotates between the U.S., United States, and Canada. 15-game regular season, CFL size field, XFL rules, TV deals would be great. And you can watch the games live online on NAFL TV like NHL TV. Now, I think some of this is true and some of this would not work. I mean, problem with field size is you have to deal with the United States stadiums, for example. I think WWE has shown us that having your own streaming channel is not worth it. It's probably better to partner up with, say, somebody like Peacock to have your streaming rights there. And potentially I could see, a situation where you have a game or two, on NBC or one of the NBC channels. I don't know what there's out there. And then the rest of the games live on Peacock, something like that would work. As far as changing, but this goes kind of what I was saying, having the teams kind of play in parallel as on that's on this line where, eventually then the top teams play. This is something that we're going to explore in a little bit on XFL News Hub. But since there's 9 CFL teams, there really needs to be at least 9 XFL teams. And that could be something teased, not right now, but in that 2022, so say if the CFL gets through their season and we deal with all of this stuff. At the end of the CFL season and they're like, okay, well, what's up next? And the XFL drops a bomb and says that they're adding at least 1, potentially 3 new franchises for the 2023 season and doing this whole thing around those franchises. That would stir up the hornet's nest. We've told people with even people within the XFL that, anytime you talk about expansion and that kind of stuff, people love that stuff. So that would be a huge thing. So that's something to keep in mind, because all these fans that are like, I'm done with this. I'm not going to watch, and I'm done. I'm going to go, watch cornhole or some other stupid thing on ESPN. And maybe you love cornhole, but you're like protesting. Guess what? When they drop like, hey, they might do an expansion, all of a sudden y'all will be back in. And I think they could make that really exciting and really work that with all different kinds of videos and different places. I think it would work really well. So let's see, on to the Twitter. We put out a tweet so the New York Rangers had said that they can, that they are, if people announced that basically a proof of vaccination 14 days after the second dose of Pfizer or Moderna or 1 Johnson & Johnson's shot will be acceptable for entry to games at the Garden beginning April 1st. That's not too far off. Negative PCR or antigen proof still work too, but seems to be the first sign of where we're heading. That's from Frank Siravalli with the New York Rangers. So there you have something that I think this, and I said this about the CFL, is the CFL needs fans in the stands in order to really have a season. Hopefully the Canadian government and local leaders will allow this as well. And that's when Vince said Canada is further back in vaccinations compared to the U.S. That's what concerns me about the CFL being able to sell tickets. And that is true there. But at least we see that there's a possibility of this kind of thing continuing in the sports world. And hopefully this gets the CFL's powers that be on notice that, this is a possibility that could happen soon. And I know that in the United States government, I believe that they had said that once we're kind of done with our vaccines, that we'll be shipping it to our friends, I believe in Mexico and Canada, kind of if there's oversupply here at some point. Let's see. Costello underscore stats says, I live in a CFL city. The game has lost the young population. If this merger happens, our team will be the one that survives. And I'll be out to every single home game. It will be sad to see a segment of Canadians die, but I'd be super pumped for this merger. So this is a fan in the Costello underscore stats is a fan in Canada. He is excited about the potential merger. And on the same thread, Moral underscore tone says, how would rules be proposed? I was a huge fan of the XFL rules, not so much about the CFL rules. That's going to be interesting just because I know that the XFL, and people, a ton of messages about the XFL rules and the CFL rules and how that worked. I know that the XFL, I mean, I was there, listening to Oliver Luck talk about these rules, and they really went and explored all the different CFL rules and trying to apply it and what works and what doesn't work for the XFL. Again, we've talked about the Halo rule, which they tried at the summer league when they were testing all these rules, and the players just couldn't get it. Now, clearly, they'll get it. The CFL players have gotten used to it from that played in the NFL, the XFL. And it's the 4-down football, and then high schools in Canada play the 3-down game. You telling me that the whole, because the CFL XFL merger, they're going to do away with 4-down? Everybody's going to move to 4-down football. So I don't know how the rules are going to work. There's definitely going to be a mixture between the two. The question is the 4-down versus 3-down. I'm telling you, if the XFL thought that would work, I think that they would have done it, but I just don't see that 3-down rule working because ultimately it's the NFL, it's college football, and then hopefully CFL, XFL is kind of that third tier, as far as popularity. You can't go completely. And again, we tried 3-down football in the United States. It didn't work. Granted, they didn't know how to sing the Canadian anthem correctly, and I'll get into that next week. But there you have that kind of stuff. All right, so on to the social media stuff. Lot of emails we got this week. Hi, Mark, in Montreal. All right, hey, what's up? Our friends up north. And don't understand some of the negativity regarding the possible XFL-CFL merger. The CFL has been unable to attract new/young fans in many of its markets, and a fresh approach XFL merger is badly needed. For its part, the CFL can provide the XFL with tradition and heritage. If a merger occurs, I think we'll see 4 downs and American field, unlimited motion prior to the snap, 1 yard off the ball, and everyone competing for the Grey Cup. I think those things. Landing a major network TV contract is key. Plans for teams in major markets like Chicago and Philly should be launched as to accommodate network executives. Bring it on. Best, Manny, checking in from Montreal. Love the international flavor. Well, I mean, it's not like he's living in Germany or something, but still up north. Our friends up north checking in. Yeah, I'm down with all those ideas. I think you're right. I think that's kind of where we're going to go. The question is, do we compete? I've heard some people talk, and the other thing is, what are you going to do with your schedule? There is no way, and this is another problem, that the XFL is playing past August 1st or the first week in August. College football, high school football, and the NFL is all happening essentially at the end of August, September, October, November. The Grey Cup is played in when it's like -20 out or whatever it is. That ain't going to happen. But I also believe the reason why the CFL has so many more games is because of the financial piece. And having this really super long season, because they need fans in the stands, and just doing a couple games, 6 or 7 home games is just not enough. And that's why they have such a long season. It would be so awkward and wouldn't work if you have the XFL season end in August and you play the championship, which is the top team in the CFL at the time, but then they continue on with their season and play in the Grey Cup in October and November. What I think is going to happen is that they're going to have to play in parallel. Your championship will be in August, the beginning of August, to garner the most buzz, and you basically will start your season in potentially March or April. Training camps maybe start in March, and then you kick off in April. I think that would work in the United States. That would work because you get past March Madness, and then you're on. I don't know about the hockey deal, hockey season. I know that's a thing. I don't even follow hockey, so I'm sorry, my friends up north. I don't follow hockey at all, but I don't know when the hockey. But it's different this year because of what. So how that would impact things, and maybe that's why they want to wait until June. But again, it's okay. Like the first couple weeks, you have a little crossover. All your teams are not going to be in the playoffs. You could walk and chew gum. And then you get the summer where it's basically, the two leagues going at it until August. That's the one piece is the schedule. I'm not really sure how that's going to work. Let's see, our friend Paladin Demo checking in. Did lots of progress on the Chiefs theme. Did uniforms, leather boots, claws, bolts and nails, gray fur and skin tone. Pretty cool there. Liked his artwork. Steven says, I've been busy on your site reading all the news about the possible CFL merger. I, for one, think it's necessary for both leagues, but it's the XFL that will have to make the biggest changes. Okay, interesting. The current 10-game season will have to be bumped to 18 plus 2 preseasons. Yeah, that's a lot. You're not going to be playing football in Canada in February. Earliest you will be playing is April 1st, and that's pushing it. And I agree with that. I think that's what you're going to have to do. Seriously, starting the XFL season the week after the Super Bowl is a bit much. Everyone has a football hangover. Make it a spring league. Start after March Madness, which is what I just said. But unfortunately, the CFL would have to compete against the Stanley Cup playoffs. If you don't understand the problem here, you don't understand Canadians. I understand they love their hockey. Even if their teams are out of it, would they still be all the Stanley Cup? I mean, you're just going to have to bite the bullet somewhere. And you can't start in March because it'll be too cold in Canada. So April is kind of it. Unless you play, I don't know. But that is a definite issue. 3, the biggest issue is the cities of the XFL it fielded last year. All are NFL cities, but the new CFL XFL will be completely competing against them in early fall. That's why I don't think it will happen. Because it's not only just the XFL NFL cities, it's college football and high school football. You lose on that. That's like a non-starter playing in the fall. The XFL may want to reconsider the NFL cities and look more at what the AAF did. They can also look at more northern cities since winter is no longer a factor. Again, they're not even considering. I mean, yeah, you can play football in Alabama, but then when the college football season starts, it's over. That's the problem. You have to end at some point in August. 4, I'm not worried about the minimum Canadian ratio on the Canadian teams during the CFL's expansion to the States. In the 90s, Canadian clubs were more than capable of taking on U.S. clubs. Baltimore was the exception, but because of a great organization, coaching staff, and players, if the U.S. teams become too dominant, that's fine. It will have to be reviewed. Yeah, there's that whole ratio that they have. I've heard things that potentially they would do ratios based, like in D.C. would get Northern Virginia, New York would get the New York, New Jersey, maybe fill it up like Pennsylvania areas, or maybe DC, and players that grew up in those areas then might play for those XFL teams, maybe doing something along those lines. We'll see about that. Florida would do very well in that, but so would DC. I mean, Virginia's got some great high school powerhouse programs. 5, the CFL has over a century of heritage. The XFL has one season that was a disaster and a half a season cut short by you-know-what. The CFL may be an endangered species, but the XFL has still unproven that they can survive. This should put the CFL in a stronger negotiation position. If the XFL teams die and fold, the CFL will still be around. And exactly. And this was my point about why, at least in the beginning, if everything goes according to plan, that the leagues will play in parallel. If I'm the CFL, I'm willing to do some things to spicing up my league. But if you go under XFL, I don't want you to take me down with you. And that's why I really think that they have to play in parallel, at least for a while, before it's established like, yeah, this is the real deal. That's the only way to do it, unless the financials are so bad with the CFL that they basically have no choice. But I'm with you on that one. Let's see, the Canadian game 6. The Canadian game, some aspects of the CFL game have to be preserved. The backlash of CFL fans is not to be underestimated. If we lose our field, rules, 3 downs, besides the game is more fun. It just needs to be promoted better to Americans. True. I suggest a CFL field, but eliminate the 55-yard line and have 15-yard end zones, keeping the width, keeping the goalposts at the goal line. That scares me. Isn't that like a safety hazard? The new field size would be the same on both sides of the border. Again, I agree they have to have the same field size. Having now goalposts right there, I just don't think that's safety-wise. That's a good. Doesn't it get in the way when you're trying to throw the ball? I'm trying to throw the ball and I get this big thing in front of me. I don't get that one. But I'm open to whatever. Seems a little unsafe to me. I'm just thinking about player safety. I suggest a CFL field. Keep 3 downs, but open to eliminate the 12th player. Keep the CFL game clock. Kickoffs, the returns are less dangerous on a larger field and a lot more exciting. And even the overtime is good. He says he attached a letter he wrote back in 2017. Never got a reply from the league. Some of the issues have been since addressed, but it's interesting reading about some of the issues I felt needed to make the league stronger, including U.S. expansion, which I am in favor of. Thanks. Keep up the great work you're doing. Much appreciated. For field to check out my 2 websites. He's got, shgarrity.com and escape and evasionww2.com. Stephen checking in with his sites there. Gave you a little plug, my friend. That was a good email. Thank you. Appreciate that. Jim checking in. I hate to say this, but I'm thinking about shelving all things XFL until further notice. He's on pause. Jim is on pause. New ownership can't seem to get a TV deal done, so now the 2022 season is probably not going to happen. Merger talk with the CFL at this point might be a desperation smokescreen by XFL ownership to cover up the fact that they can't get a TV contract. I hope I'm wrong. Thanks, Marks. Battlehawk Jim checking in. I've heard other people say that this is like some kind of smokescreen. I think they've been having this talk. I think this was on the table from the get-go, even before when they were buying the XFL, that the CFL was on their radar. And I have a feeling these talks have been going on for a while. It could potentially have something to do with this, an ability to land a decent TV deal and going to TV partners and saying, well, what if we partnered with the CFL? Would that make it work? That could be a possibility too. And, that we have more teams, would you be interested in that? I don't know. I really don't know. Again, but The Rock and Danny Garcia have lots of TV shows. So the fact that they couldn't land an XFL with the numbers that they were good, and they brought in numbers, we will have to see. I'm not sure. And finally, we got Gary checking in from Texas. Says, Mark, how goes it? I am a non-NFL football guy going back to the USFL. Really enjoyed the CFL teams in the mid-90s. Even went to Canada for 2 Baltimore Grey Cup games. Cool. So what do you think the play is going to be? ? Let the CFL play a year or 2 with CFL rules and then add an American team or 2. Get the CFL on some type of stream app or broadcast type situation. The Rock is tight with NBC, and there is no way that he has not talked to his pals at NBC about this. People like The Rock don't make these type of moves randomly or in a vacuum. I agree. I think I would, as of right now, I think the best option potentially could be that NBC. You know, NBC doesn't have anything going on Saturdays. I mean, could you imagine an XFL game on NBC on a Saturday night? I think that would do well. And on a Sunday, you have to remember places like ESPN and some of these other guys, they also, they have like, especially ESPN has Sunday night baseball. They're not going to do anything. So ESPN, I don't think has any interest unless but they're not going to promote, Sunday night XFL game that goes up against their baseball. I would love to see the XFL go head to head with baseball and see what those kind of ratings are. Because fantasy baseball is fine. Daily fantasy baseball sucks. And betting baseball sucks. So, yeah. And you have football on there. I think the XFL could take down Major League Baseball. As a pragmatist, I think that if the CFL doesn't change, it will go away of Blockbuster Video, Kodak, Toys R Us, and BlackBerry, and other businesses that failed to change and adapt. Change is painful, but sometimes it's the only path forward. But that comes from an American, and we change the rules at our games all the time. Adding a 3-point shot in basketball, 35-second shot clock. NASCAR changes the rules all the time. Baseball just added a DH for the NL. Baseball also did interleague play a while back. The world didn't end. This is true. And I'm sure there's purist nerds out there that sitting there with their VCRs still flashing 12 because they don't like change. I try to look at the CFL objectively and see what it can hold on to and what it should let go. I think the CFL field size is done. Soccer, baseball, rugby all play on variable field sizes. That being said, I think the CFL could let fields be used that are larger than American football fields and smaller than CFL fields. The other is 4 downs. I know this is the talk of a heretic to a hardcore CFL folks. I don't know, they're kind of on the fence. But if you go to 4 downs and keep the other CFL rules like the Rouge, movement, defense on a yard off the ball, I think you could have a greater offensive game that would be appealing north and south of the border. I just don't see a path forward for the CFL without giving some ground. Absolutely. Everyone considered the CFL experiment a failure, but everyone forgets that it worked well enough that the NFL actively killed off by moving the Cleveland Browns to Baltimore. Baltimore doesn't get an NFL team without a successful CFL team in Baltimore. That's very true. The NFL didn't randomly fall in love with Baltimore again, and while passing it over to give expansion teams to Carolina and Jacksonville, the CFL was working in Baltimore and San Antonio. The NFL didn't want this CFL business getting out of control. I know, tinfoil hat wearing, conspiracy theory time, yes. Hey, man, you make some good points there. Granted, the CFL shot itself in the foot by not having Doug Flutie play American teams on American soil and figured out how to get those games on TV, even if it was for free. The CFL has long been a short-sighted league, more worried about being Canadian than making money or being successful. Anyway, take care. Keep up the good work in regards to the XFL, CFL content. Gary, checking in from Texas. Some great points there, Mr. Gary. Appreciate you checking in. There's just a lot of interesting things at where this is going to go. If they do something silly like, all right, fans, you vote on the rules, I'm kind of like, come on, just give us the rules and let's go. And the other thing too is like they need to test this stuff on like they did before, but they did so much testing. They have all the analytics. I honestly like the XFL rule book has been combed over ridiculously. And this was the best version. I'm sure they have ideas going in when the season stopped of how they would make adjustments to the rule book. But I have a feeling it's going to be mostly XFL rules because the XFL would have adopted those CFL rules had they felt like it would work. Not just to be like unique, but they talked, again, I was there. They talked about looking at the CFL rules and seeing what works and what doesn't work and how players adapted to it. And they tested all this stuff out for like a year. So we'll see what happens. But it's a lot of interesting conversations. Again, plug in with your friends over up north. There's definitely some good shows on there, and just, kind of people to follow on Twitter to really get an idea of what the pulse is up there in Canada. I gave you my take. I'm curious to hear about yours. Also, remember our question of the week, XFL fans. All right, let's be honest. The probability that we have a 2022 season in the XFL is like, Hank, that's my old dog, Finn growing like another tail. I mean, it's just, I personally don't see it, again, unless they look at the books and it's so bad that they're like, we don't want anything to do with the CFL, and we're just going to kind of do our own things. Thanks, but no thanks. Other than that, I just don't see it. I don't see how you could spin it up that quickly unless everything is already laid out. And the CFL, I think they're just trying to figure out what the CFL has and where they can come to an agreement. And again, we're getting stuff in April. We'll get a draft coming up here in a couple weeks, the global draft, and then we'll get the potential draft, and then training camp starts. So we're only weeks away from decisions needing to be made. This is not like we have to wait. We can wait a couple months. It's like, okay, like official announcements. And now here's a little insider tip for you. Tuesdays, Wednesdays are the days when news drops. So really pay attention to XFL News Hub on those days, because that's when the big news really breaks. Because they don't want to do it on a Friday, and they don't want to do it on Thursday necessarily, especially with March Madness going on right now. It would just get lost in the shuffle. That Tuesday, Wednesday lull is when you get some big announcements coming. So just keep that in mind, my friends. All right. Long show, a lot longer than I thought it would be. It was mostly me rambling. But hey, if you want to be part of the show, email podcast@xflnewshub.com with your MP3s. You know the deal, 888-430-7692, extension 3. If it's easier just to record stuff on your computer, to be honest with you. XFL Week in Review podcast. Leave us a review. We appreciate that. And remember to like and subscribe to our channel. That helps spread the word about XFL News Hub, XFL stuff, gets it out there into the YouTube world. We have a lot of stuff we're working on here. We have, we are waiting for plans so that allows us to do plans. So we're in this holding pattern too. I feel bad for the players out there that are kind of in this holding pattern. But we too at XFL News Hub are in holding pattern, but making plans and being agile. And that's what the XFL and CFL need to do, is be agile. Run in parallel. Listen to your friend Mark. Run in parallel. Do that for a while. Establish yourself. Here's the other thing. Run in parallel. After 3 years, sign a contract for that you get one XFL season, 2 CFL seasons, and then an option for a 4th season. And then in that option for a 4th season, that's when Redbird Capital, and that's when you're running at full steam. And we'll see if the partners want to re-up or you want to put it out there. Remember, the NFL contract, I think, is for 10 years, so they're not going anywhere. And then that's when you strike. And then and if it's that hot, you could sell your Redbird Capital could take their XFL franchises and sell them for $30 million or $100 million bucks per franchise. And then they'll make their money. So run in parallel. And then if you need to merger after that, but that's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to get a CFL season, a 2022 CFL season, potentially with new rules to let that kind of, or at least some new rules, maybe not the full-blown deal. And then you get the 2 leagues playing in parallel, and hopefully we can get a good TV contract. Because I do believe that one of the reasons why the XFL reached out to the CFL was to give them a stronger bargaining chip for potential, a better TV contract. I don't know what the rule is, but there's no rule I assume that in the United States we can't bet on CFL games. Maybe that's a rule in Canada that you're not allowed to bet, or there's no sports betting or something like that. But in the U.S. we can, and that's all you need to worry about if this is where all the TV money's coming, and that's how you're approaching these guys. And hey, the first season of the XFL News Hub, A lot of people were watching my videos about my XFL picks, and they weren't doing it because I look pretty on camera. They were doing it because they wanted to bet money. And people kept coming back, and the numbers got bigger and bigger. So I was helping somebody out. Some degenerate gambler I was helping out. So it made me feel good, I guess. All right, remember, you can follow us anywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff. You can download our app and leave us a review. We'll appreciate that. Where you can find this podcast anywhere you can find podcasts. If for some reason you can't find this podcast on your favorite podcast deal, let me know. Show notes, xflnewshub.com/xfl-podcast, and join us on the Discord, contemplating, depending on how the season goes, CFL fantasy football. I don't know. I don't know how close we are with our wrestling one. I've definitely made some progress, but we'll see where that goes. So, all right, that's it for my friends. Thanks for listening. Mahalo. Welcome, my friends up north in Canada, for checking in. We're super excited to be part of, all of us being part of For the Love of Football family. It's not like you're invited to our family and we're invited to yours. We're just kind of like, now we're molded together now, which is really cool. So God bless. Stay safe out there, my friends, because I want to see you at some football games, and I will see you all later. And remember, question of the week: pick your XFL fans. Pick your CFL team. Who are you going to root for in 2021 and 2022? And why did you pick them? I want to know that. You'll get my pick next week as well. That's it for me, folks. Thanks for listening, and I will see you all later.